Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, historic, consequential, incredible. Those are just some of the words now being used by many to describe what Trump pulled off over the weekend in Scotland. He was visiting one of his golf courses, and of course, he wasn't just there for pleasure. He was there for business as well. And so, looming in the background was a possible now trade war with the European Union. And many people don't know this, but the EU, the European Union, which is a 27 member states, 27 countries, is the world's largest trading bloc, the EU itself. But that trading bloc is America's largest trading partner. We do more trade with the European Union than we do with China or Canada, Mexico, Japan, take your pick. It is our number one trading partner. And yesterday, Trump did the impossible. He now achieved a trade deal in which, listen to this, from this point forward, the European Union is going to pay a baseline tariff of 15% on all of their exports to the United States. And very importantly, that includes cars and automobiles. So, you like your German cars? You like your Mercedes, your BMWs, your Volkswagens, whatever. There's going to be a 15% tariff now on all of these automobiles and all other products coming into the United States. Now, on our end, and by the way, it's not just this. Not only will this protect American car makers, but what it will do is end the massive unfair advantage that the Europeans have been imposing upon not just American car companies, but you name it, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, agricultural products, chemical products, everything under the sun. The Europeans had massive tariffs already prior to this deal, as well as non-tariff trade barriers. In many countries, they were effectively closed. So, the Europeans themselves yesterday, the EU commissioner, von der Leyen is how you pronounce her last name, she openly admitted that the EU now was taken to the cleaners in this deal because before, many of their markets were closed while our market was open, giving them a massive unfair trade advantage, which led to huge trade deficits for us, and of course was massively beneficial to the Europeans. Those days, she says, are now over. Trump has rebalanced the entire trade between Europe and the United States, making it much fairer and much more advantageous to the United States, to American companies, to American workers, to American manufacturing. And on top of all of this, it's not just now it's going to be a baseline tariff of 15%, with the Europeans now effectively getting rid of their tariffs on our goods. But furthermore, listen to this. They are now going to buy over $750 billion in U.S. energy products, and they're going to be investing an additional $600 billion into the United States. More investment from Europe. They're now committed to buy nearly $1 trillion worth of our goods. Their non-tariff barriers and their tariffs are coming down, while ours are going to be a steady 15%. Winning, winning, winning. Listen now to President Trump saying, I just made a deal. And it is literally the biggest trade deal in human history. Roll cut 3, Mike.
So we have good news. We've reached a deal. It's a good deal for everybody, I believe. And I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
It is.
It's a giant deal with lots of countries.
We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. It's 15% tariffs across the board, all inclusive. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
With tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides. So again, congratulations and many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now that's EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen, the one that you hear, the woman talking. It is. It's the biggest deal in trade history, and these are the two biggest economies combined, EU and the United States. And look, the days of the Europeans ripping us off are over. They're over. And the days of these massive trade deficits where we constantly lose out to the Europeans, where we lose investment, where wealth is getting transferred to the Europeans, where we continue to see American jobs being lost and our industrial manufacturing base being hollowed out, those days are over. Absolutely over. And listen now to President Trump very quickly. President Trump saying, look, someone had to do it. And it was tough, and it led to a bit of a trade war for a couple of months. It wasn't pleasant. The Europeans were not happy. Back and forth, there was a lot of insults flying. But in the end, they had to pay a 15% tariff to continue to have access to the American market, which is the most lucrative market in the world. And the Europeans realized, hey, look, we're going to have to put some water in our wine. We were ripping them off, and now it's going to be a good deal, but it's going to be a fair deal. And as Trump says, all I want is a fair deal. Roll cut 3A, Mike.
You're known as a tough negotiator and deal maker.
But
what is in front and fair. And what is in front of us?
That's less important.
If we are successful, I think it would be the biggest deal each of us has ever struck. So I'm very much looking forward.
Ever struck by anybody? That's true.
So he's right. So now here's a couple of, right away, out of the gate, a couple of major consequences. Number one, the naysayers, those that were preaching gloom and doom, that when Trump announced Liberation Day on tariffs, if you remember, that they came out, again, the media lied again. The media was wrong again. The Democrats were wrong again. They all came out in unison, it's like a chorus, that this was going to spark a recession, that this was going to lead to the stock market crashing, that we were now going to have this international trade war that was going to burn down the global economic trading system. Basically, the sky was going to fall. There'd be a depression, a Great Depression. And instead, nothing. Nothing. The very opposite has happened. The stock market now is at literally its highest level ever. The economy now is really starting to boom. And the trade deals now are falling in place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great Britain, done. Japan, done. Vietnam, done. Philippines, done. Indonesia, done. And now the European Union, done. And what I find incredible, and I'm sorry, but I have to say this. These, by the way, Japan was ripping us off. Great Britain was ripping us off. Vietnam was ripping us off. Canada's ripping us off. Mexico's ripping us off. China obviously was ripping, they were raping us practically. The EU was ripping us off. Yet why is it? Seriously, ask yourself, why is it? And again, I want to stress this. The EU commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, the woman that you heard in the last two clips, openly said, no, we were taking advantage of the United States. And this was because she's taking a lot of heat back home, saying, well, you just rolled over. I mean, Trump just took you guys to the cleaners. And she came out and said, well, we were taking advantage of America for decades. This just rebalances everything, makes it more fair. Why is it that no other president, not Joe Biden, not Barack Obama, not George W. Bush, not Bill Clinton, not Bush 41, these are both Democrats and Republicans. How come nobody fought for American workers? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, President Trump now does it, pulls off an incredible, in fact, the biggest trade deal ever in history. Again, proving the naysayers wrong. Now, what this does, on top of now protecting the American market, and in particular, protecting our automobile industry, our pharmaceutical industry, our chemical industry, our farmers, agriculture, I could go on and on and on, is what it now does is it establishes essentially this is now going to be the American position going forward, a 15% baseline tariff. The only country that has so far gotten under 15% is Britain. And why? Because they're an extremely close ally. And B, they negotiated early and they negotiated respectfully. And so Trump said, you know, you guys are being very nice about this, more than fair about it. I'm going to cut you a deal. I'm going to give you a little bit of a special. But for everybody else, it's going to be at least 15%, if not more. So, for example, Vietnam and Indonesia and the Philippines, it's actually 19%. But Japan, EU, it's 15%. It appears now this is going to be the standard, the baseline tariff that Trump now wants to set for many, many countries around the world. He now has to move forward on China. That's going to be the toughest one, I think, for him to nail down, because the Chinese are trying to drive a hard bargain. They have a lot to lose. In fact, of any country in the world, they have the most to lose. Because who's been dumping all of their goods and products for the last 30 years? China. Who's racked up trillions of dollars in trade surpluses against us? China. Who has been robbing us blind? China. Who's been stealing our intellectual property? China. Who's been engaging in unfair, illegal trade practices? China. So, and they don't want to stop. They want to continue to take advantage of us. Canada and Mexico, I think, are going to be easier. Trump, I think, is going to be tougher on those two because of the way they've conducted themselves, or at least their left-wing governments have conducted themselves. So you may see a 20-25% tariff on Canada and Mexico. But the pieces now are starting to fall into place. And so what you're seeing now is an America First trade policy. Something that should have been done, frankly, 35, 40 years ago. But better late than never. And what I find incredible, this is to me what it blows my mind. This was so blatantly unfair. Just to give you an example, Germany had over 10% tariffs on all American cars. Okay, it doesn't matter. Ford, GM, doesn't matter. SUVs, sedans, it doesn't matter. 10%, almost 11% tariffs. This was before any of these deals. Under the name of so-called free trade. They had 10 to 11% tariffs on our cars going into Germany. They had zero on all of their cars coming into the American market. Plus, there were all kinds of quotas that the Germans imposed on American cars and all kinds of other non-tariff barriers that basically made it impossible for American car manufacturers, Ford, GM, etc., to sell their cars. Germany's a big market, 80 million people. It's one of the wealthiest, if not wealthiest country in Europe. And that's why Trump kept saying over and over again, he goes, look, I'm a businessman. I travel to Germany all the time. Beautiful country. I like the people. But, hey, I go to Berlin. I don't see one American car. Frankfurt. I don't see one American car. Munich. I don't see one American car. I come back to the United States, and I see people driving German cars everywhere. I don't care if they're Jettas. I don't care if they're Passats. I don't care if they're BMWs or Mercedes. Or I see German cars wherever. I see Volkswagens wherever I go. So how come your market is effectively closed to us, but our market is effectively wide open to you? All under the name of free trade. What's so free about it? Except that you guys are free to rip us off. Now, what I find incredible, how come no other U.S. president ever stood up for the American worker? I'm just using cars now as an example. For the American automobile industry, for American companies, American industries, American manufacturers. You allowed your country, pardon my French, to get screwed year after year, decade after decade, over and over again. And it was all fine with you until Donald Trump came along? What you're going to see now is you're going to see other countries now follow in line. After this massive victory over the EU, Canada and Mexico will come to the table. And in the end, China's going to realize we don't need them, they need us. And Trump is going to break China. And now he's going to recreate the global trading system that no longer takes advantage of the United States. My friends, we are watching an historic achievement by an historic president, and we are now living through historic times. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, massive, historic, consequential achievement, and yet all the media wants to talk about, and this shows you how pathetic they're becoming, is Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. I'm telling you, you can't make this up. They don't want to talk about this incredible trade deal. They don't want to talk about the new economic numbers. They don't want to talk about everything that Trump has achieved in the last 6 months. No. All they're talking about on CNN or MS Left BC or ABC News, NBC News, CBS News, New York Times, Washington Post, they are obsessed with Epstein because they're convinced that there's something there. They're convinced that somehow, some way, this time, they're finally going to get Trump. However crazy it may seem, however desperate they are, they somehow think, no, this time we're going to get him. Listen now. This is mind-blowing. Trump in Scotland has just announced, again, I want to stress this, the biggest trade agreement in history. But what does the so-called press corps, the state-run media, what do they want to talk about? Roll cut 10, a mic.
Mr. President, was part of the rush to get this deal done to knock Jeffrey Epstein's story out?
Oh, you got to be kidding with that. No, had nothing to do with it. Only you would think that. That had nothing to do with it.
Was it, was there a rush to get this deal done to knock the Epstein story out? Knock it out. Well, even if we do the deal, you people are still going to talk about it. So it's not going to knock anything out. I mean, pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Now, here is what's happening on the Epstein front, just so that everybody knows. Late last week, the Deputy Attorney General, the number 2 under Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, met with Ghislaine Maxwell and her lawyers for 5 hours one day and then another 3 hours the following day. There were DOJ officials there as well, recording the interview, transcribing the entire interview/deposition. And according now to what's been leaked in the media, because they can't reveal any of this, apparently now they have given Ghislaine Maxwell what is called limited immunity, meaning if she gives up bigger fish, they are not going to charge her with other crimes. She's already got 20 years in jail. To me, by the way, that was a gift. She should be in jail for the rest of her life and then some, but let that go. So they're going to give her limited immunity. So if she reveals, incriminates herself in evidence that she gives, they're saying, okay, we're not going to charge you for that. So apparently now there are some big names. There was, as I said the whole time, there was an Epstein client list. Or if you want to haggle over a list, there were major clients of Epstein who were involved in sex trafficking and who were involved in the sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of underage girls and boys. And apparently a name now that is coming up again and again and again is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton went to Epstein Island 28 times. There are now victims coming out and saying, I was sexually molested and abused by Bill Clinton. Ghislaine Maxwell is now spilling the beans on the Clintons because it appears Hillary Clinton knew as well. Not that she participated, but she was an accomplice. Now, that name is coming up over and over again. There are other names, big billionaires, donors, hedge fund guys. Listen now to Trump speaking to reporters outside of Marine One, saying, you guys keep going on about me being in the Epstein files. Let me tell you, there are some big names in those files, and wink, wink, Ghislaine Maxwell is starting to sing like a canary. Roll cut 11. Mike.
Can you trust what she's telling him? She's a convicted trafficker who's eager to get out of prison.
Well, he's a professional lawyer. I think he's been through things like this before. But, you should focus on Clinton. You should focus on the president of Harvard, the former president of Harvard. You should focus on some of the hedge fund guys. I'll give you a list. These guys lived with Jeffrey Epstein. I sure as hell didn't.
So he's talking about Larry Summers, former president of Harvard now. Apparently she's mentioning his name quite frequently. Trump himself mentioned Bill Clinton. And, of course, some of these big hedge fund guys. Now, what about Trump? This is what the media, they're hoping to hit pay dirt finally. Apparently, Trump's name does appear in the Epstein files in several places. But even the mainstream media is saying over and over and over again, and they have to say this, because they know that's defamation if they don't, and that they're going to get their pants sued off. I mean, they're going to be bankrupted. So they keep saying over and over again, just because your name is in the files doesn't mean you did anything wrong. I.e., I saw at a party in 2001 Epstein with Donald Trump. Okay, it's not a crime to be at a party with the guy. Whatever. President Trump knew Epstein. We went to Mar-a-Lago and we shook hands with Trump. So, in other words, just the fact that your name appears in the Epstein files doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. In fact, there are countless names in the files. Doesn't mean all of them did anything wrong. Now, the media is covering itself by constantly repeating this disclaimer. They're hoping, however, that something somewhere shows up. Trump with an underage girl, Trump with a child, Trump somehow being involved in the trafficking of kids. It's BS. They know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. But they're trying to get Donald Trump at all costs. And that's why they just keep mentioning it and mentioning it and mentioning it. It's like guilt by association. Just keep throwing Trump's name out there and tie it to Epstein. And that's why pressure now is building inexorably, that eventually Trump will release all of the files. I believe he has no choice. Now, what is clearly upsetting Trump is that there are going to be names in the files, like himself, in which there is no verifiable evidence whatsoever, where it's just loose talk or gossip or someone's name is just mentioned and people's professional credibility could be destroyed. And that's why, if you notice, Trump kept saying, I don't mind if you release the files, but it's got to be credible evidence. You can't just put out any name for the sake of putting out any name. That's why he's been hesitant to release all of the files, not just for himself, obviously, but for many other people who could have their reputations completely trashed and destroyed, and they never did anything wrong. In the end, I think it's not going to matter. Congress is going to force the Epstein files to be released. Bondi's going to have no choice but to release the Epstein files. And then we're going to have to look at them. And then we're going to differentiate those that committed actual real crimes from those who did absolutely nothing. Okay, my friends, let me ask you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Is President Trump's tariff policy working? In the wake of yesterday's historic agreement, the largest trade deal in history with the European Union, is President Trump's tariff policy working? A, yes. B, no. You know my answer. Hell yes. What do you need? A ton of bricks to fall on your head? But that's me. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER. You can also vote via X, and as you know, I'm very active on X. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhn as in national ER, at the Kuhner Report. The headline in the Daily Telegraph in London, which is the conservative paper of the United Kingdom and their biggest selling paper, their most influential paper, along with the Times of London, quote, Trump has triumphed over the EU. So in Britain, in Brussels, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU commissioner, is taking a lot of heck. They are really attacking her, saying that she waved the white flag of surrender, that Trump outmaneuvered her at every point of the negotiation, and that she effectively rolled over for the Americans and for Trump. So, Brussels is saying it, Berlin is saying it, London is saying it, Paris is saying it. This deal, big win for the United States, not so much for the European Union. Okay, very quickly, 617-266-6868 if you want to get in on the conversation. This is from 603. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. As you know, my wonderful wife, my better half, and we did celebrate our 29th wedding anniversary yesterday. So we had a nothing, a nice dinner. The kids, well, obviously the kids joined us. They pretty much took over the dinner, but let that go. But we did manage to spend some time together and celebrate our 29th wedding anniversary. And one of the topics of conversation was, yes, Trump's trade policy. Because as you know, my better half, Dr. Grace, putting liberals in their place. Grace, big critic of Trump's trade policy. Doesn't like his tariffs, didn't like the trade war, doesn't like protectionism in general. She's pretty much a free trader. And, she was predicting a lot of doom and gloom. Not so much. I kept telling her for months, relax, have a glass of Italian wine, take it easy. It's all going to work out in the end, okay? Trust me. They need to make a deal to get access to the American market. They're going to, yell, scream, shout, threaten, but in the end, they're going to toe the line, and then they're going to finally sign the deal. And now you're starting to see all of them, one by one, fall into line. So, and this EU deal, the biggest. So here's what 603 writes. Jeff, so this latest, and so far the greatest trade deal with the European Union begs the question. Did the Kuhner man get a big "you were right" again, Jeff, over the weekend? As I'm sure you remember, Dr. Grace of Woto was vehemently against the timing of President Trump's tariffs. She argued how the tariffs were going to backfire on Trump, how the last thing we as voters wanted to hear was that we might have to deal with a little bit of pain in the short term. So I'm just curious. Did you get a mea culpa from your resident Calabrian? Or Grace's parents are from Calabria in the old country. No. My wife never admits when she's wrong. She's always right. When she's right, she's right. And when she's wrong, she's right. So, no, I did not get a mea culpa, but that's okay. All I need to know is I was right. And, of course, Trump was right. To me, that's all that matters, because that means things are good for America. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me ask all of you, just to put another big log on the fire, because the media doesn't want to talk about this massive trade deal. Because, again, it blows up another narrative. And by the way, have you noticed there hasn't been massive inflation as they predicted? Most of the companies are eating the tariffs, like I predicted. And it didn't lead to a collapse in the stock market. It didn't lead to a recession. In fact, now they're all saying the likelihood of a recession is almost zero. That the fundamentals in the economy are very strong. Why? Because all of this investment is now pouring into the United States. Because now people and companies around the world don't want to pay that 15-20% tariff. So they're saying, you know what? Let's build in America. Instead of exporting, let's go right to America and build plants and factories there and hire American workers there. So wages now are also starting to go up. So what you're seeing now is that Trump is building a solid foundation for a massive economic expansion. Trumponomics is working. It's working. Now, they don't want to talk about that because, again, they were caught lying one more time. So it's all Epstein all the time, around the clock. So I want to ask all of you, what do you make of the fact now that Ghislaine Maxwell has now been given limited immunity, and apparently she's starting to spill the beans? Bill Clinton now is in serious trouble. Larry Summers' name, former president at Harvard, very powerful, prominent Democrat. His name is now being mentioned by Ghislaine Maxwell. You're talking now about some very prominent Democrat billionaires and Democrat donors. Should Bill Clinton be indicted? Let me ask you this. Number one. Number two, would you like to see him go to jail? Number two, on Ghislaine Maxwell, many of the victims now are speaking out. And they are saying that there should be no deal made with Ghislaine Maxwell. She wants a pardon from Trump, or at a minimum, a commutation from Trump. Because according to her, if she's going to give up some big fish, she should get something in return. Now, Trump is not interested in pardoning her. He's not interested in giving her a commutation. But the victims are now speaking out saying this woman is an absolute monster who didn't just arrange for the girls to be trafficked to Epstein and his powerful pedophile friends, but in fact, she also actively engaged in the sexual abuse and mistreatment of young underage girls and young underage boys. That she is a pedophile herself. She wasn't convicted of that. She's convicted as a sex offender and in sex trafficking, but not in actually the molestation or rape of children. They say that she should have been. And that there's no way in hell that this monster should be given anything approaching a pardon or a commutation. Do you agree? And the ultimate question, do you believe Trump is in the Epstein files? And is that the reason why he is refusing to release them? And not even so much that he's in the files in that he's guilty of anything wrong, but because he knew Epstein many years ago, his name will be mentioned, whether he took a flight with him, whether they had dinner at Mar-a-Lago, whether they ran into each other, whatever it may be. And that Trump just doesn't want his name affiliated or associated with Epstein in any way, shape, or form. And that's why he's holding back on releasing the Epstein files. Is that the reason why? I'm just curious. And ultimately, should the files be completely released? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very, very quickly. Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about the Ghislaine Maxwell interview, and is there a pardon in the works for Ghislaine Maxwell? Listen now to Speaker Mike Johnson. Roll cut 13, Mike.
Mr. Speaker, the victims referred to Maxwell as Epstein's right-hand woman. Here's what one victim who testified under a pseudonym told the court at sentencing, quote, "The many acts that were perpetrated on me by Epstein, including rape, strangulation, and sexual assault, were never consensual and would not have occurred had it not been for the cunning and premeditated role Ghislaine Maxwell played." Is that someone deserving of a pardon or commutation in any circumstance, Mr. Speaker?
If you're asking my opinion, I think 20 years was a pittance. I think she should have a life sentence at least. I mean, think of all these unspeakable crimes, and as you noted earlier, probably 1,000 victims. I mean, you know, it's hard to put into words how evil this was, and that she orchestrated it and was a big part of it. At least under the criminal sanction, I think is an unforgivable thing. So, again, not my decision, but I have great pause about that, as any reasonable person would.
You know, it's always, would it kill him to speak in a more direct, forceful way? But anyway, the point is a valid one, but it's always so lawyerly the way he speaks. But anyway, let that go. No, there should be no pardon. Of course not. The woman's an absolute evil monster. But this is what gets my goat. And you tell me if you agree or disagree. 617-266-6868. Now the media are foaming at the mouth. Now they're demanding justice for the victims. Right now it's all, this was on Meet the Mess. So, now it's all, Kirsten Welker and like, you're not considering a pardon, are you? These are victims? How dare you insult the victims? Where were you under Biden? Where were you under Joey? Where were you under Obama? Where were you during Trump's first term? That's what I find disgusting. You never gave a damn about Jeffrey Epstein. You never gave a damn about the victims. The media was silent about it. In fact, I know they mocked us. They mocked conservatives. They mocked Trump supporters because we were the ones that kept demanding justice for the victims. We were the ones that kept saying Epstein was at the epicenter of a global sex trafficking network in which young, underage girls and boys were being sexually traded, molested, abused, and exploited. And they laughed at us. Oh, these are crazy conspiracy kooks. They mocked us. And so, Obama covered it up. Loretta Lynch, his attorney general, covered it up. She didn't release the Epstein files. They were protecting the predators. Under Biden, Biden covered it up. Merrick Garland covered it up. They all covered it up. It was Trump, to his credit, who said, we're going to release the files. It was Pam Bondi, if you remember, who initially said, right? Remember, I have the files. They're on my desk. They're being reviewed. We're going to release all of them. She was the one who gave out, remember those binders early on in the administration to all of these top MAGA podcasters and influencers and talk radio hosts. Here's what we have on Epstein so far. Phase 1, phase 2 is to come. Now, she reversed herself. To me, she broke a seminal promise, okay? But that's something different. My point is, Trump made an issue out of it. Bondi made an issue out of it. MAGA made an issue out of it. We were the ones who were demanding justice for years and years and years and years. The only reason why the Democrats now and the media are even discussing it is because they sense a political angle. They sense a potential political opportunity to go after Trump. And if you remember, that's what I warned him about. I said, don't do it, Mr. President. Whatever's in those files, it's not worth it. Because now the media is going to say, what's he covering up? What's the cover up? Why not release the files? There must be something there. And now, for how many weeks? Literally, I'm talking weeks. It's wall-to-wall coverage on Epstein, 24/7. And they're just repeating the same thing over and over. I'm like, how could you say the same thing? Oh, my, over and over. I mean, I'm going to shoot myself watching these people. But so they're trying to turn this into Trump's Watergate. And here's where I think they really, I'm telling you, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They are making such a big mistake over this because the more they keep demanding the files be released, eventually the files are going to be released. In other words, okay, you want it, you're going to get it. And they're going to have nothing on Trump. But it's going to be top Democrat after top Democrat after top Democrat. If Bill Clinton alone is exposed as having gone to Epstein Island and having engaged in illicit, illegal sexual activity with underage girls, he's going to jail. And this is going to damage the Democratic Party for generations to come. You start talking some of the other names that are on that list, you know what? This is Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. Because now they're the ones who are demanding that the list be released. And when the list comes out, it is going to burn the Democratic Party to the ground. And a lot of people online are speculating that this has been Trump's ploy the whole time. You want to talk 3D chess? This was all 3D chess. Oh, I know it's in the files. Wink, wink. You're not going to release the files. Well, why not? No. We're going to let the media foam and foam and foam at the mouth. We're going to get every Democrat to vote to release the files. We're going to demand and make sure that Congress insists on releasing the files. So if innocent people are damaged, it won't come on us. It's going to be on their heads. And then all of this will come out at the instigation of the Democrats and the media. And then they're going to have to report on the whole thing. And when they do, the entire Democratic Party is going to come crashing down. We'll see. But they have just overplayed their hand one more time. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Let me ask you, the Epstein files, should they be released? And is Trump in those files? Is that what he's hiding? Or is the media and the Democrats, are they now overplaying their hand? And now it's going to come back and bite them. 617-266-6868. Craig in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Craig, and welcome.
Hey, I'm in full agreement with you on this. I've been saying this right along that Trump is totally playing them. It's the drip effect where, he's baited them into this, and now their constituents are all out and clamoring to release these files. They think they got Trump. The thing that I love, though, is that nobody is seeing all the rest of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. I mean, he's working on breaking the Fed, the central bank. There's so much other stuff going on, and everybody's distracted with Epstein. And when he said these are the golden years, he's playing them right like a fiddle.
Well, yeah, look, Craig, I understand the legal reasoning that he, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and others are giving, which is, Craig, forgive me, just to give you an example. Say I gave a call to Epstein for whatever reason, financial advice, whatever. Now, I haven't slept with anybody. I haven't diddled kids. I haven't done anything illegal or criminal. But I mentioned in the files. I'm just, as an example, right? Jeff, not that I would never hang around with somebody like Epstein, but I'm using this as an example. Jeff Kuhner called. Epstein picked up the phone. According to one of the victims, she was waiting, and Epstein said, wait, I got a call from Jeff Kuhner. Now, Jeff Kuhner's name then is in the files. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. You just made a phone call, a business call, whatever. So the point is, the reason why you keep stuff like this secret is that hundreds, if not thousands of people's of reputation, their professional reputations, can be ruined and destroyed. And in fact, you're opening up the government to massive lawsuits. Say, hey, everybody thinks I was a pedophile. Everybody thinks I was a part of Epstein's network because you guys released the files and my name was mentioned. They don't distinguish between the fact that I just called the guy we talked business for 15 minutes. They think I went to Epstein Island. Okay, my friends, so just very, very quickly, you now have a bill that's making its way through Congress. It is co-sponsored by Thomas Massie, sort of a libertarian, very much a libertarian, constitutionalist, and Ro Khanna, a left-wing progressive from California. And they're co-sponsoring a bill that would force Pam Bondi and the DOJ to release all of the Epstein files. All of it. It has majority support. There's enough Republicans and enough Democrats that will give them a majority to force the DOJ. So it's obvious now that eventually the Epstein files, all of them, are going to be released. And what I was trying to get at is, once Congress gets involved, then the Department of Justice can turn around and say, hey, if someone's name has now been defamed because of this, I mentioned you made a phone call, you were on a flight with Epstein, but you never did anything. You never, molested a child or participated in one of these crazy parties, or you never did anything illegal at all. Then if there's a lawsuit, if someone's professional reputation has been now destroyed or ruined, don't come to us. In other words, don't sue the DOJ. Don't sue the federal government. That was Congress. And that will then wash their hands of the whole thing. So many are suggesting or implying that Trump now has sucked the Democrats into a trap, because now he's got the entire media clamoring, practically begging for all the files to be released. The entire Democratic Party, who are now trying to cover up the Epstein files, but now they think they're going to nail Trump. So now they're saying, no, to hell with it. Release all the files. And now he's going to get Congress to jump in as well. And once they release the Epstein files, and Trump is already now telegraphing this a little bit, he says, you're going to find out it's going to be Bill Clinton. It's going to be Larry Summers. It's going to be some of the biggest Democrat donors on the planet, the billionaire hedge fund guys. This is going to burn the Democratic Party to the ground. Like, okay. As I said, be careful what you wish for. You just may get it. So anyway, we'll see what happens. 617-266-6868. As one texter put it, Jeff, if Trump had anything to do with Epstein in terms of molesting or raping or abusing or trafficking children, if he was in any way on that infamous list, the Democrats would have released it a long time ago. Remember, the Biden DOJ and Merrick Garland went through that client list with a fine-tooth comb. This has now come out. So they looked at that list over and over and over, 6 ways to Sunday. They wanted to nail Trump on Epstein, and they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's why I've been saying for a long time, Biden and Garland were covering this up, because they saw big Democrat name after big Democrat name after big Democrat name. They didn't find Trump. He's not on the list. If he was, the Democrats would have released it a long time ago. Very quickly, I want to read this text. It's a very, very good one. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470. Jeff, how convenient now that Ghislaine Maxwell is coming forward when Virginia Giuffre and Epstein, or Gioff, however you pronounce her last name, and Epstein are not able to refute anything. Maxwell can now say anything she wants. How can she be trusted? Granting her immunity would enable her to wield enormous power. She should get nothing but a reduction in her sentence in exchange for, and this is all in caps, provable evidence. That's where I think they're going right now with Ghislaine Maxwell. And this is very typical in prosecutions or investigations. Can you give me the really big fish? You give me the really big fish and provable. Show me some hardcore evidence. And then maybe we can knock off a few years from your sentence. And by the way, they've now got her scheduled to testify in front of Congress. under oath. So eventually, the truth is going to come out. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Russ in Boston. Thanks for holding, Russ, and welcome.
Jeff, George H.W. Bush set the stage to screw the American worker in a sellout to communist China to make the swamp rich. Let's face it, Ross Perot and Donald Trump did their best to expose the sucking sound of American jobs going to China. President Trump has always respected the American worker. He puts the American worker first over the swamp. He has exposed the masses of greed, and that's why they hate him. President Trump is delivering us from evil.
Russ, can you please hang on? I love where you're going with this. 617-266-6868 is the number. Tim in Andover. Thanks for holding, Tim. And I'm sorry. I forgot. Yeah, Russ. Sorry. Russ, are you there? Did we lose you?
No, Jeff, I'm here. Listen.
Oh, great. Okay.
You.
Oh, wait, Russ. Just to set it up, because a lot of people are just tuning in now. So you're talking about that incredible deal that Trump just finished with the European Union. It is the biggest trade deal in history. Even the Europeans are admitting they were taken to the cleaners. Trump beat them and beat them good. We're going to have a baseline 15% tariff on all European imports coming into the United States, including their cars, German cars, Italian cars, French cars, and that their market now is going to be wide open to American goods and products. It is a clear victory, no question. And Russ, you made a brilliant point, going all the way back to Bush 41, who sold out the American worker. And Ross Perot warned us with that giant sucking sound. You said no one outside of Ross Perot and Trump has championed the American worker and American industry and American jobs like Perot and Trump. Please pick up where you left off, Russ.
Okay. First of all, President Trump has delivered us from evil and bondage. Let us not forget that President Trump, it's either President Trump or communism. Let us not forget what the government did to us during the COVID pandemic. Freedom of choice went out the window. Now, Jeff, as far as the Epstein files are concerned, what I believe, okay, I don't know this is a fact that I believe, there were too many world leaders on that list. And to him, the American workers first, to make these trade deals come first. And part of the great thing about this, okay, Trump will be seen as those leaders that he did not try to expose them, okay? It really puts him in a great bargaining position. Now, if the Congress forces their hand, it's the Congress's fault and not President Trump. That's what I feel.
Well, Russ, look, I have to say, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, there's no question now that something has changed in his second term. I'm not saying there isn't a ton of resistance. There is. But within the swamp itself, they're starting to melt away. For example, the big, beautiful bill. A lot of people I thought would never vote for it ended up voting for it. Strange. This massive trade deal. The way the Europeans were yakking and talking and stomping and threatening, and they folded like a cheap suit. So what I'm saying is Trump is racking up victory after victory after victory. And all of this began to really take off after the whole Epstein story blew wide open. And who blew it wide open? Remember, it was him. He could have Russ, if you're going to play it tactically, all they had to say was, well, we're still investigating. That's all. We're just going to know it's an open investigation. And when we find something, when we might reach our conclusions, we'll let you know. But instead, they came out and said, no, the case is closed. If you remember, case closed. There was he committed suicide. There was no client list. He never blackmailed anybody. And we're not going to press any charges. And that's what unleashed a firestorm. A firestorm. And that's why that story has never gone away since then. But Trump was the one who drove it. And now I'm starting to think, boy, it's almost like, he's put all of his opponents in a room. They're all release the list, release the files, release the files, release the files. And now he's going to have Congress come in and basically detonate it. And then he can say, I'm not responsible. And just get out of the way. Get out of the way as that grenade gets detonated. And then Trump can turn around and say, hey, don't blame me. I was the one. Hey, I said, let's not do this. And boom, everybody gets blown up. Russ, do you think that's his ultimate strategy?
Jeff, absolutely. Okay. And I want to add this, Jeff. These are glorious days for me. I've been waiting for over 50 years for the swamp to get what it deserved, the media to get what it deserved. And I can tell you, I hated them from the false reporting coming out of Vietnam, Jeff. And I'll just give you one example. Tet Offensive 68, okay? It was an intelligence blunder. There's no question about that, okay? But that scumbag Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America, what a bunch of BS, okay? He gets on the tube and says, we can't win this war. Then the next thing you know, Lyndon Johnson, the coward that he was, turns around and says, I'm going to concentrate on ending the war, and I'm not going to spend another day to get reelected or anything else, which is all a bunch of crapola, okay? Without question, okay? But the truth is this, everything the communists had taken over only lasted for a short period of time. We won that for sure, okay? But that's not what was reported in the media. And there's no question today, okay, if you look back at that history, the media created that as the turning point in the Vietnam War, which was nothing but a big, giant lie, okay? And I've hated them all since then, Jeff. And again, these are glorious days for me. They're finally getting their comeuppance, all these SOBs, every damn one of them.
Well, Russ, again, just to reinforce what you're saying, the Tet Offensive, you're right. It was a giant lie that Cronkite, CBS, the entire media pushed. The big three networks at the time, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they lied. We now know in retrospect, and the communists themselves admitted, the Tet Offensive was a disaster for them. It was a huge defeat. In fact, it was such a huge defeat, Russ, they said they weren't able to mount a proper offensive again for years after Tet. They only took over buildings for like 6 to 8 hours. And then the Americans came in and just routed them. I mean, just destroyed them. But the media made it seem, oh, look what the Viet Cong just did. Oh, they took us by surprise. Oh, our guys were caught flat-footed. Oh, no, this war can't be won. This is a turning point. The communists are going to win. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when. And, of course, Cronkite famously went on TV and, our troops have fought nobly and bravely and courageously, but this war cannot be won. And he declared it like he was some kind of a prophet. And they lied, and they knowingly lied. And they sabotaged. They stabbed our troops in the back. And you're right. Tet was a big American military victory. And by the time the media was done, they made it seem like it was one of the greatest, if not the greatest defeat in American history. And Russ, I used to always say this when I taught history at McGill. And it would drive the students crazy, but I'm like, look, you may not like it, but it's a fact. Name me one battle in the entire Vietnam War that the Americans lost. I go, just one. Not two, not three, not four. Just name me one battle. America never lost a single battle in that entire war. So how did we lose the war? Our politicians lost the war. Our corrupt media lost the war. We gave up Vietnam. We never lost Vietnam. And I've got to ask you this, Russ, because you spent 2 tours in Vietnam, so you know what you're talking about. When you look at what a bunch of liars, how mendacious the media was then. Has it gotten worse over the decades? Or has it basically been the same? We're just more aware of it. In other words, was the media, I know they lied, but was it still a little better? They tried to be a little fairer? Or really, were they always this bad for the last 50 years? We just now have opened our eyes finally.
Okay, who put his life on the line, his riches and everything else, just like those that signed the Declaration of Independence. He has put himself out there, and they've tried to destroy him and everything else. He's the one that has exposed the truth. And you don't know how grateful I am to President Trump, okay? And I'll tell you right now, I usually avoid people who start talking bad about Trump, okay? But I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to stand by and let any stupid, ignorant fool try to disparage Donald Trump for what he's done. You know something? If we had an honest media, he'd have an 80% approval rating right now. But because we have a dishonest media made up a bunch of self-serving scumbags.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's over 50%, but you're right. If we had an honest media in this country, he'd be the most popular president we ever had. 617-266-6868 is the number. You know, Sandy just made a really good point to me off air. She said, you know, Jeff, you're right. We didn't lose a single battle in the entire war in Vietnam. I mean, the Revolutionary War, that was something different. Our war for independence, we lost quite a few battles against the British. But in the end, we persevered after 7 years. But the Vietnam War, we never lost a single battle. She says, but look at the images, especially the last one, when we evacuated Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, that helicopter, and people desperately trying, off the rooftop of the American embassy, and these poor, desperate Vietnamese who knew they were going to get butchered, slaughtered by the communists, desperately trying to hang on or jump onto the helicopter, while one more helicopter is just literally thrown into the sea, just literally falls into the ocean. I mean, that image and the way the withdrawal was handled was an absolute debacle. I mean, it was a debacle of the highest order because we were leaving with our tail between our legs. So the way we left and the images that were there, it made it look like we were defeated. But we were never defeated. We surrendered, but we were never defeated. 617-266-6868, or if you want to be more accurate, Vietnam, South Vietnam was abandoned. And it was abandoned primarily by the Democrats. Because that's what they used Watergate to chop down Nixon. And once they chopped down Nixon, then the anti-war left that dominated the party, the anti-American left, now had their chance to inflict the first defeat on America in our history. And that's what they wanted. They wanted us to lose that war. And people never talk about what happened afterwards. There was a Holocaust in Southeast Asia. No one ever talks about the South Vietnamese, how many of them were slaughtered, put into gulags, millions of them on these life rafts, and desperately fleeing, going to places like Australia and other countries. The boat people, as they were called. Or what happened later in Cambodia or in Laos. I mean, it was a tragedy of the highest proportion that when America lost, communism won. And the people there paid the ultimate price. 617, but I digress. 617-266-6868 is the number. Tim in Andover. Thanks for holding, Tim, and welcome.
Hi, good morning, Jeff. And I couldn't agree more, and just want to say once again, God bless our veterans. Anyway, you know, to kind of pivot back to Maxwell, I think you have to cut a deal with her. as sickening as it is, and the reason I say this, and again, provable evidence only, is that if you think about some of the powerful names on the other end of the table with some of the best lawyers that money can buy, if you don't have her, you're going to have a bunch of 15-year-old girls who are now in their 30s, who are going to be, who, some of them, may not have the resources to fight a Lawrence Summers or to fight a Bill Gates. But if you take that girl, if you add in some evidence from Ghislaine Maxwell, who, let's face it, she was there, at this, it becomes a lot more credible. And I think a lot more people would either think about cutting deals or possibly providing information on other things. I mean, if you get Lawrence Summers in a room and if you got him dead to Sunday, he might start talking about the global banking network. He might talk about all the corruption happening at the World Health Organization that we're funded. This may be a case about Epstein, but it truly may be a launching point where we can find out a lot of information because it's the same dirty people, the same corrupt people who are involved in all of it. So I hate to think of cutting Maxwell a deal. I wouldn't commute her sentence, but like you said, maybe reduce it. I think you have to.
I agree. I mean, I think the key phrase here, Tim, is provable evidence. Right? You don't just want to take her word for it and say, well, she's going to provide testimony or something. No, I don't think her word is good. She's been caught lying in the past many times, and she's been convicted of some of the most monstrous, unspeakable crimes imaginable. So she's going to have to give the receipts. So whether it's the client list, the infamous black book that she had, whether it's tapes, whether it's video, it's got to be something that is very damning. And if she has it, then I think you got to make a deal. I think there's no question. And look, Tim, just to further what you're saying, look, I think it's obvious Trump is being lobbied very heavily by foreign governments around the world. Here, just take the government of Great Britain. You think they want the truth about Prince Andrew to come out? This will destroy the royal family. Now, we look at it as Republicans, small r Republicans. Well, we don't care about the royal family. We kicked them out 250 years ago. But in Great Britain, the royal family is everything. I don't care if you're the Conservatives or the Labour Party. You don't want to see the royal family burned to the ground. If Prince Andrew was diddling underage girls, and I'm telling you, he was diddling underage girls, and I think it had something to do with Virginia Giuffre being killed. This is a woman that says 2 weeks before she dies, I'm not suicidal. If anyone tells you I am, they're lying. And then mysteriously dies, quote unquote, a suicide. I don't think so. And that was one of the girls Prince Andrew was involved in. So the British government is telling Trump, please, don't release the files, man. We're not just talking about Prince Andrew. This is going to affect the monarchy, the stability of Great Britain itself, the royal family, which goes back, 1,000 years in Great Britain? Please, don't release it. Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, was involved in, almost a peace deal with the Palestinians. Apparently, he's on the list. At least that's what the media in Israel is claiming. You've got Bibi Netanyahu and others saying, look, man, this is going to open up a hornet's nest here in Israel. Barak, not just is Ehud Barak going to be in big trouble, but political people around him are going to be in big trouble. So what I'm saying is you've got government after government after government telling Trump, please, just, hey, keep those names buried. You don't know the headaches this is going to give us. It's going to lead to political scandal, political fallout. Governments can fall. The monarchies could fall. Countries could fall. Please, just let sleeping dogs lie. So he's under tremendous pressure not to release the files. But if Ghislaine Maxwell has the goods, think about Bill Clinton. Just Bill Clinton. Leave aside Bill Gates, Larry Summers. Everything you said is true, Tim. But just think about Bill Clinton. Imagine now, finally, the truth comes out. Remember, he raped Juanita Broderick. He raped her. He raped Kathleen Willey, allegedly, in the White House while he was president. He raped her. He pinned her up against the wall, according to her, and she gave very detailed account of what happened, and he raped her. Now, this man has been a serial sexual predator his entire career, before he became president, while he became president, after he was president. And we conservatives warned about it. We impeached him over it. And the media covered up for him. The Democrats defended him. He's a hero in their party to this day. Bill Clinton goes down. Not only are we vindicated, it is a massive blow. A massive blow. A terrible blow to the entire Democratic establishment, to the entire fake news media. The Democrats may never recover. And then it's going to go to Hillary. What did she know and when did she know it? And I'm telling you, Ghislaine Maxwell has the goods on her as well. Because you know who set up a lot of his appointments and his flights? It was Hillary. And then the question is, so you knew kids were being diddled? You knew that kids were being raped and molested and trafficked? And you, this supposed feminist, Mrs. Women's Rights? Remember, it's the Democrats. It's all about the children. You let it happen? She's going down. And that's why I'm looking at this and I'm like, if this is Trump's strategy, don't release. Why? Don't release. Hold your fire. You know, like in a battle, hold it. You know, the enemy's coming and you're like, oh my God, they're going to hold it, hold it, hold it, hold your fire right till the possible end. And then you got as many of them exposed as possible. And then go, fire, bang, 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 bang. And you just take them all down. He's now got, remember, the same media that was saying BS, conspiracy theory, oh, these right-wing kooks, people like Kuhner, they're crazy. What client list? What Epstein? Because Epstein was a big Democrat. And they know that. And the media hobnobbed with him. And the elite of the elites of the Democratic Party partied with him. So they had to disown him and pretend none of this happened. Now, they're foaming at the mouth. They're salivating. Release the files. Release the files. So the Democrats are now all in. The entire media is all in. The rhinos, the Republican establishment, they're all in. Everybody now's in. Release the files. And Trump very soon is going to say, okay. In other words, fire. Hold your fire. Hold your fire. Okay, fire. And I'm telling you, Bubba's not going to recover. And I don't even think Hillary's going to recover. Even if they don't get prosecuted, their reputations will be in tatters. In tatters. I go back to the OJ analogy, Tim. Yes, he got away with it. He didn't go to prison for the murder of Nicole. But he was never the same again. He was a pariah. And that's what's going to happen to so many of these Democrats. Even if they don't go to jail, their reputation is finished. Final word to you, Tim.
If I agree, and OJ is a perfect analogy. This, to me, all boils down to, is there one tier of justice or two tier? If the list isn't exposed, if they're not exposed, then there's two tiers. There isn't anything anyone's going to say about Bill Clinton that's going to shock us, right? We already know that. Through the years, I've seen prime ministers of Italy go to jail, and France and other places. And if this unleashes a lot of chaos around the world in different governments, who cares? The world tomorrow wake up, have their coffee, and move on. No one will care. But what they'll care about is there one set of justice or is there two? And that's what will be the big difference. And whether or not this list comes out. And I just pray to God it comes out and we find out there's one system of justice.
Brilliant. I couldn't have said it better myself. Brilliant. Tim, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Let me just add very quickly one other thing. And he's right. Everything Tim said is right. But if you look at, Israeli prime ministers have gone to jail. French, Sarkozy, went to jail. Italian prime ministers have gone to jail. But, whether it's Israel, France, Italy, I'm just giving a couple of these as examples. They went to jail over money. It's always the same graft. They steal, they embezzle, they take money, they loot. Even in Eastern Europe, many of them go to jail, but it's always over money. They steal and, take, but not so much. You just get too freaking greedy and they nail you, okay? But it's not, and sex scandals have brought down governments. It used to. Now nobody cares. But in the old days, a sex scandal would bring down a government. A minister, even a prime minister, ask the Irish, Charles Parnell. He was the big nationalist politician in 19th century who pushed for home rule for Ireland, a brilliant man. And he was laid low by a sex scandal. It was honestly very sad. But my point is, a sex scandal has brought down powerful people, powerful governments, powerful ministers. But it's usually either a mistress, again, they're adults, or it's, at the time when homosexuality was frowned upon, it's with a man. But not kids. This is a new frontier. Not kids. Not molesting kids. So that foreign leaders were involved in trafficking, molesting, and abusing underage girls and boys. Holy mackerel. Holy mackerel. That is going to be a new line that's been crossed. And I think it's going to tear societies to shake societies to their very foundation. So, anyway, we'll see. 617-266-6868. And I think that's why everyone is on pins and needles. Because, there's some things you don't do. And I'm telling you, diddling kids is one of them. Richard in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Richard, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I think there's so many complications and potentials with the Epstein files, and I don't think that Trump is involved in any way, shape, or form. He's too casual about it. He's too sure of himself, and I think the Democrats are like rifling through a desk. They're looking for something and they can't find it, and this is just a deflection, in my opinion, from what is the bigger news, which is Tulsi Gabbard's evidence that she has pertaining to the 2016 election. And I would just like to point out one thing, that evidence that was shown is now being shown to be truthful and accurate, and the media is up to their eyeballs in it. It didn't just affect and destroy a 2000 presidency, his first term in office. It effectively destroyed any even if there was fraud in 2020. It really destroyed any impetus he had to win the election in 2020. There were too many people in this country who were convinced that something had happened, that he had done something wrong. You can't have you can't paint him for 2 or 3 years without having some of that paint still on him in 2020. They effectively destroyed two presidential terms. What a disgrace. This is the bigger news, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I think this is Look, the Epstein thing is a big scandal because it involves a very powerful global pedophile sex trafficking network that implicates the most powerful political leaders, business leaders, and Hollywood actors and directors. So this is a who's who of the political, corporate, cultural elite. So I think there's no question. It's a massive scandal. The Russiagate scandal, as it's called, I think is the biggest scandal of the last 100 years because it ties in the stolen election of 2020. That's why they stole it, because they couldn't let him continue in power. I think it explains the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. I mean, everything falls into place from that seminal central sin, that first seminal scandal. And I think, Richard, it didn't just, you're right, it polarized the country. It inflamed the country so much because people were convinced that Trump was a traitor and that Trump colluded with Putin. Why? Because the media told them so and because the intelligence community told them so. So they go, well, you have to believe our own CIA. You know, according to them, you're not going to believe our own CIA. Who the hell are you going to believe? If you're not going to believe CNN, who the hell are you going to believe? And it turned out to be a massive lie. But I would even add one more thing, Richard, and I'm going to just read a text, and I want to let me know if you agree with it. This is from 703. Again, you can text us 70470, because it's true. It actually impacted us even in a more profound way. Jeff, I am still amazed at how much Obama and company divided this country, right down to family members not speaking. The lies cost more than the money for all these investigations into the fake Russia collusion. It really cost us our country's unity. And Jeff, look at how divided we are to this day. No longer is this the United States of America. It is the divided states of America. And it is perhaps what the dear leader, Barack Obama, wanted all along, to fundamentally transform America by disuniting us. This must not be allowed to be swept under the rug. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, all of them must be held accountable. Richard, what say you? It split our country in half. And in many ways, it divided families, it divided friends, and in a way, we've never recovered. Agree, disagree?
Totally agree. And if you watched the talk shows yesterday, very little, if anything, said about...
Mike, you couldn't let him finish? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let's go right back to Richard in New Hampshire. Richard, you were making the point that the way the media is trying to spin the bombshell revelations that Tulsi Gabbard now revealed through declassification of multiple classified documents. Clearly now the media is doing everything they can to protect Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Comey. Please, Richard, pick up where you left off.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I agree with that text that you read earlier. It's divided families, but not only that. I think ultimately, if you can do a tracing of this, I think it led to the wars. I think it led eventually, because I don't think that if Trump had remained in office as he should have and did what he could have done, and then repeated in 2020, which he should have done, I don't think that you would have had what's going on today in Ukraine, and millions of people have died. And I don't think that ever we would have had to have gone into Iran. I think that Trump was ready to stop that 6 years ago, except that the Democrats came up with this concoction, and the media drank the poison, and now they're in so deep that they can't admit that they went along with it, because that would be an admission that they do not want to make and can't afford to make.
Richard, you hit the nail right on the head. Absolutely hit the nail right on the head. The only thing I can possibly add to what you're saying, and I think it would have avoided the debacle, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that occurred under Biden early on, which, yes, it cost us the lives of Marines. I'll never forget Abbey Gate, but billions and billions and billions of our military hardware, our advanced weapons, Bagram Air Base, and then the poor people of Afghanistan. My God, they've literally reintroduced slavery. Children are being enslaved, sex trafficked, sold. 9-year-old boys are being sold as sexual slaves all across the Taliban. Young girls are being sold on the auction block. And if you happen to have blue eyes or green eyes, you get more. She's worth more than if she only has like brown eyes or whatever. I mean, it's what we have seen come back under the Taliban is a humanitarian nightmare. And that's Joe Biden. That's the Democrats. That's what they gave us. That's what the stolen election gave us. And that's, I believe, ultimately what this Russia collusion hoax gave us. Richard, you're absolutely on fire. You nailed it. And that's why, to me, the consequences are horrendous. And they need to pay. Every single one of them involved needs to pay. 617-266-6868. Thank you very much for that call, Richard. I appreciate it. Now, listen to President Trump, because he yesterday was asked specifically about Russiagate and the bombshell revelations unleashed by Tulsi Gabbard and everything that we have found out. And listen to him. He's on his way to Scotland. This is before they signed the big deal, trade deal with the European Union. And they're saying, well, the Supreme Court said you have presidential immunity, and all presidents have presidential immunity for actions that they've taken as part of their core responsibilities as commander-in-chief. Is this now going to bail Obama out when it comes to Russiagate and the fact that he directed the Russia collusion hoax? Listen now to Trump's response. Roll cut 5, a mic.
How do you think that the Supreme Court's ruling that benefited you on presidential immunity would apply to former President Barack Obama and what you're accusing him of doing?
It probably helps him a lot. Probably helps him a lot, the immunity ruling. But it doesn't help the people around him at all. But it probably helps him a lot. He's done criminal acts, there's no question about it. But he has immunity, and it probably helps him a lot.
A trade agreement you're looking to sign too.
He owes me big. Obama owes me big.
So he's saying Obama owes him big. He thinks that it is covered under presidential immunity. I don't, by the way. And so do many legal experts. I don't. To me, it's not part of your core responsibilities to literally order crimes. That's not part of your responsibility as president to say, no, we're going to completely and utterly ignore and suppress all of the intelligence and then manufacture intelligence, fake evidence, a false narrative to frame the incoming president so we can sabotage, undermine, and eventually overthrow him. So I don't think that would fall under presidential immunity, but we shall see. 617-266-6868. Okay, my friends, it's all open. Everything's on the table. Phone lines are open. I want to hear from you. Are the walls slowly closing in now on Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, the entire criminal gang? Let me just play a quick cut. If I were Brennan, and almost every legal expert now says he is very exposed, not just for the crimes that he committed, ordering the Russia collusion hoax, ordering that the intelligence be contrived, manufactured, manipulated, politicized to frame Trump as an agent of Russia, but that he was asked repeatedly under oath about the Steele dossier. And did he include the Steele dossier in that infamous intelligence community assessment that was released by Obama in early January 2017, weeks before Trump was to be inaugurated? And of course, we now know the whole thing was predicated on that massive lie, the Steele dossier, which was garbage, complete fabrication. It was made up. Under oath, Brennan said, no, we never relied on the Steele dossier. That is a 1,000% stone cold lie. So forget the crime itself. They've got him on perjury and they've got him dead to rights. Brennan should be like Clapper, lawyering up. Instead, he's now going on the fake news media, state-run media propaganda, and he's now trying to delegitimize and demonize Tulsi Gabbard. This is a furious attempt at spin. The media is trying to protect Brennan at all costs, but it's not going to work. This is Brennan on MS Left BC saying the only one that should be locked up, is Tulsi. Roll cut 12. Mike.
We've been looking at this evidence, as you said, for 8 years. We know what the truth is. What's she doing there?
I think she's projecting. Obviously, she's engaged in the politicization of intelligence to support Donald Trump. And so she is pointing to previous intelligence products that we put out and saying that this was a politically designed product. I think what she's trying to do is to gain the good graces of Donald Trump. Clearly, several weeks ago, she was on the outs. Yeah, because, Donald Trump said that basically that she was wrong when she said earlier that the Iranian nuclear program, the weaponization program, had not restarted. And so I think they were seeing that she was not being invited to meetings. She was not in the confidence of Donald Trump and others. And so in a very, I think, hurried sort of exposition here of information, she puts this out. I wish she would look at the evidence. I wish she would look at the assessment. I wish she would look at the reviews that were done.
That's the problem. She has. And notice the game that they're playing. It's always the same. It's always arguing motives. Oh, she was on the outs. Oh, she's trying to get herself back into Trump's good graces. What are you, a mind reader? Like, what do you... So, again, you're trying to tell us you can decipher her motives? Notice, he never argues the facts. Were you at the December 9 meeting? Yes. Did you repeatedly point to the Steele dossier as the basis for your intelligence assessment? Yes. Was Trump ever an agent of Russia? Niet. Did he ever collude with Russia? Niet. Did he and Putin ever work together to help him win the election? Niet. So, everything that you claimed in your intelligence assessment was wrong. And you were ordered by Obama to include all of that in your intelligence community assessment. So, he can't argue the facts. Now, honestly, he's just digging himself a deeper hole. The more he attacks Tulsi Gabbard, I'm telling you, the worse he's making it for himself. If he had half a brain, he should shut up. But what you see when you look at the documents, the memos, the emails, Brennan isn't that smart. He put everything down in writing. The guy's like an oaf. Seriously. He's an airhead. There's nothing between his ears. He's a thug. He's a communist apparatchik. He was an Obama hatchet man. That's all he was good for. But this guy is not. I'm telling you, he's up there with Joe Biden. pre-dementia. Not very smart. So keep talking, because every word out of your mouth is now digging your grave. 6-1, your legal grave. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. John in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I am wondering why nobody is saying anything. Treason is not covered under presidential immunity. Only civil lawsuits and potentially some criminal charges. But it does not extend to treason, which is a grave offense against the nation and is specifically addressed in the Constitution. He's not... Obama, if they bring him up on charges of treason, he's not protected. Period. And why are no lawyers coming out and saying this?
Well, there are many. I mean, to be fair, John, Mark Davis, who's a brilliant constitutional lawyer, is saying this. I've been reading numerous op-eds by others who are saying exactly, and by the way, your analysis is not 100%. It is 1,000% accurate. It is absolutely spot on. Treason and sedition, you're not covered by presidential immunity. What are these people talking about? And look, what the Supreme Court essentially ruled, just so that people understand, if, say, President Trump, and let's say Obama did this, okay? But President Trump ordered a drone strike on an American citizen in a foreign country because he believed that that citizen, say, was a member of Al-Qaeda or ISIS and was about to commit a terrorist atrocity or was a high-value terrorist target, then you cannot sue him in court once he leaves the presidency saying, well, I'm suing him for murder, or he didn't give this American citizen his due process rights. He didn't get a lawyer. This wasn't taken out, fought out in court. No, he just ordered a drone strike and the guy's dead. So what the Supreme Court said was that no, the executive branch has certain fundamental powers and fundamental authority over what the commander-in-chief can do. And so he is protected under presidential immunity. Otherwise, if we don't give him that kind of immunity as part of his quote-unquote core functions, see, that's the key, core functions. Now, they forget treason. The lawyers for the Democrats said, so you mean if Trump just picks up a gun and shoots somebody, well, that's presidential immunity? No, they directly address that issue. They go, no, that's a crime. Then he would be impeached immediately, and then he would go to jail. He doesn't give him a license to shoot somebody in the head or, whatever, rape or steal money or whatever. But we're talking about his core functions as president of the United States. So if he orders a drone strike on an American citizen, as an example, he can say, look, I'm protecting national security. I am the commander-in-chief. And this is a terrorist on a terrorist watch list. My people tell me we need to take him out. We take him out. So that's all presidential immunity was. In fact, they even said this. It's limited immunity, meaning only for certain things like official acts. It's not for him just shooting his wife or raping somebody or stealing money or, in the point you're making, committing treason and sedition against the United States. That's expressly forbidden in the Constitution. That's why, John, I'm saying indict Obama. 617-266-6868 is the number. Barbara in Maryland. Thanks for holding, Barbara, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff, and thank you so much for taking my call.
My pleasure, Barbara, as always.
It is a wonderful thing to wake up and turn on the radio to your show, and I see that all of the revelations are finally being discussed, the real story. President Trump knew exactly what he was doing from the very beginning. So I'd like to take a bow on that and congratulate Richard, your caller, who correctly described what Obama's plight and what everything he did has destroyed our country. People not speaking to each other. Obama has caused so much division in this country that he needs to be indicted just based on that alone. However, they don't have to rely on that because he's such a crook, he's such a criminal, and a lot of people don't even know about the coup he was behind in Kenya. So this is not the first time for him. He did it with Odinga in Kenya in 1994, and that was a bloody coup. A lot of people died and killed in the street. But you look at what's happening here in America now after he became president, and his reign of terror is what I'll call it, because that's what seems to have been the birthplace of it. People in the street with all this mess going on. It all started with him. And he is not covered. I think that's why Tulsi Gabbard used treason and seditious conspiracy so many times in her presentation. And she said it deliberately. And what I've noticed is no one is saying, no, that's not so. Brennan isn't saying it. Clapper isn't saying it. Comey isn't saying it. And if Brennan is smart, he would shut the front door on that mouth, because a lot of what he's doing now, in my opinion, is going to be used against him in the future because he's continuing to lie. And he's already lied under oath. And I'm sure he has lawyered up. So I'm just I'm excited about it. I'm so glad that Epstein has kind of taken a back seat. And I do have a comment about that if you have time. And I would like your response to what I'm going to say. There seems to be this comparison. I think people need to, make compartments for things. When you talk about sexual predators, child trafficking, we think of little kids, boys and girls, being sold across state line, and like what Joe Biden did, what his administration did with all the children that are now missing, like 350,000 of them that they can't find. Those were trafficked kids. There's a distinction between that and the good time girls, 16, 17 years old, whose parents have no control over anything that they do, and they're out there looking for high rollers and big-time spenders. None of those people, Jeffrey Epstein, none of those young people, young girls, I'm sure they were girls, I haven't seen any boys mentioned in this group. Nobody forced them on an airplane. Nobody forced them to go to any of the places, to the island. They went of their own free will. Bad decision-making? Yes. But I'm a New Yorker, and I'm just going to call it the way I see it. Yes, it was a terrible thing to happen, but trust and believe me, nobody coerced them. And that's the part of it that people just, it gets all mixed in with the predator and the diddling kids. No, these are the good time girls. See, I thought my father was crazy because I couldn't go anywhere. My girlfriends were wearing makeup and lipstick and stockings when I had to wear socks. I had dresses with sashes in the back. And I thought my father was a tyrant. But that's what it takes to keep your kids sometimes under control, especially girls, because they're the good time girls. And I think we all know that that's true, too. And not
Barbara,
to minimize it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please. Finish your thought.
I would say not to minimize it, because it is not a good thing, but it happens, and it's still happening.
Oh, that's
the
true.
girls are
No,
still
that's
out there
very
looking
true.
for high rollers.
By the way,
Where's their mom and daddy?
Your dad was a very good man and a very good father. You're right. He was right to, have you dress in, long socks and, appropriate dresses. And There's no question about it. And yeah, you think your father's a tyrant until you get older and you realize he really loved me, you know, and he knew he was looking out for my best interests. No, look, there's no question. Some of the victims now are coming out. So we know what kind of girls they were. 14, 15, 16 years old. Many of them say, look, we went voluntarily. Some of us did go voluntarily. Now, they come from broken, I'm not excusing it, I'm just explaining it. They came from broken homes. Many of them came from, you know, single moms, or the mom was a drug addict. They were very vulnerable, very susceptible. Epstein preyed upon that. And they were drugged themselves. They got into parties. They got hooked to drugs. And then Epstein would use that and say, well, if you want more, if you want to fix, if you want more cocaine or more heroin or more whatever, you know what you got to do with this guy. Or if you want him to, you know, if you want him to be your sugar daddy and have someone to take care of you, you know what you need to do to pleasure this guy. And many of these girls are now saying they were way too young, they were immature, they were underage, it was statutory rape, that they were exploited, that they were manipulated. And so, you know, and that's why they say we want justice. We were 15, 16 years old. These are adults. And they preyed upon us. So you're right. It is different than, say, trafficking an 8, 9, 10-year-old child and putting them in a sex dungeon someplace. It's true. But it's still statutory rape. It's still sexual predatory behavior. And look, they were sleeping with underage girls. And, you know, like, I'll just give you an example. Ava now is 13 years old, or she's going to be 13 in September. And some of her friends are 13, even 14, even 15. And now it's the summer, and they're coming over to our house, and they're by the pool. And this was just, on Saturday? They had like a mini pool party. And I looked at my wife, and my wife looked at me, and I said, can you, look at these girls? That's what Epstein was sleeping with. That's what he was grooming. That's what he was trafficking. And look, these are girls from good families, good parents, respectable homes. But even when you talk to them about anything, they are so gullible. They are so immature. They're so underdeveloped. They're so impressionable. It is so easy if you want to manipulate, deceive, and control these girls. It's just incredible. They want to be part of the in crowd. Everything to them is cool. Everything is an adventure. Everything is potential fun. So the man was an absolute monster. And that they partook of this, it's sickening. It really is. And a lot of these girls, as I said, came from broken homes, broken families. Many of them had, I said, parents who were drug addicts, and they got involved in drugs as well, or Epstein plied them with drugs. That's how he controlled them. Some were out and out kidnapped. For example, there's testimony now that's come out. One of Epstein's close friends in France abducted 3 12-year-old girls. They were 12. They were prepubescent girls, and he loved them prepubescent. That was his greatest treat. And brought them to the island as a birthday gift, and said, you've got them for a day. I'm going to have to traffic them back, but they're yours for a day. And they put 3 girls, they dressed them up in these skimpy bikinis, and they put them in a room, and it was a dark room, and Epstein went in there and did his thing. And then the next day, they went back to France. So some were abducted. Others, it was more what you're talking about. But honestly, either way, and to show you how sick it all was, there was one victim who's now come out. I feel so sorry for her. They're all messed up. Now they're all messed up after this. But she came out and said, I was into the party lifestyle, and I was into drugs, and he hooked me on drugs. And so he got me at 15, and he then passed me around to other powerful men. That's why they're all saying this idea that there wasn't a client list is a lie. It was, call it whatever you want. Those are his friends. Those were the people who gave him money. Those were his business associates. Those were his business clients. And they knew what they were getting. They were getting young underage girls. But by the time she turned 18, suddenly she said, nobody wanted me. She said, for 3 years, they passed me around like a cheap hooker. But the moment I turned 18, Epstein said, I don't want her. And the other pedophiles around him said, she's too old. Like, honestly, like she was like a grandmother. 18 years old. These people are sick. I mean, they're sick. That's what they don't want to come out. And mark my words, Barbara, Bill Clinton is number one on that list. He liked them young. He liked them really young. And that's statutory rape. And he should burn in hell. And I believe he's going to do time. If those files are released, Bill Clinton is going down. Bill Gates is going down. The royal family is going down. And you're going to see the names. I've seen the list. I'm 99.99999% sure that that's the authentic list. Okay, I'm being honest with you. There are some rock star celebrities on that list and some Hollywood actors. It's going to blow your mind. And you ask yourself, why? Why? I mean, there's one in particular. He's an international rock star. You can have any woman you want. There's groupies throwing themselves at this guy. 18 and up. Hell, 17 and up. They're not even going to bother you for 17. This sicko wanted him 15, 14, 13, 12. Ugh. And the scariest thing of all, Barbara, and I think that's why everybody's so nervous, they knew. The media knew. Trust me. They partied with Epstein. They partied with him after he was released from prison, when he was convicted, or he pled guilty to soliciting sex with a 13-year-old prostitute. And he's released from prison. George Stephanopoulos was there. Diane Sawyer was there. I could go on. The who's who, practically all of CNN was there. All of NBC News was there. All of CBS News was there. Leading reporters from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the New York media elite were all there at the party. It was lobster, caviar, champagne. The booze was flowing, and there were a lot of women, and a lot of really youngish women in that room. And literally, these hypocrites, women and men, toasting, Jeffrey, you're back. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. They loved the guy, and they knew what a monster he was. And they knew the way he made his money. And they all covered up for him. That's why now, to be honest, Barbara, when I see them casting stones on Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and by the way, she was at the party, and she was his pimp. She wasn't his right-hand man. She was his pimp. Whatever these guys wanted, whatever the women wanted, she arranged it. Now, to be honest, sometimes it wasn't all children or underage girls. It was escorts. It was, whatever. They're 25 years old, 20, whatever. You want cocaine? You got it. You want you want prostitutes? You got it. Whatever you want, you got it. And Epstein had them all on tape. And he was compromising every single one of them. But to see them now cast stones and going on now about, Trump's name is mentioned in the files. And I'm like, you sons of, you know what, I got to be careful. You SOBs. You covered up for him for decades. You partied with him. You saw the victims face to face. You never gave a damn. Now, all of a sudden, because you want to get Trump, embarrass him, humiliate him, make some kind of an association with him, suddenly now you're all outraged? It's disgusting. I'm telling you, it is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And honestly, Barbara, one of the biggest reasons why I want these files, these Epstein files, to be released, I want them all to go down. All of them. All of them. I want to get on ABC News. They'll never have me on. I want to be on ABC News. I want to ask George Stephanopoulos to his face, that anti-Trump hater, why were you at Epstein's birthday party, his infamous birthday party, the year that he was released from prison after he pled guilty to soliciting sex with an underage 13-year-old girl? I want you to explain that to the audience, you sick pervert, you. Or, by his own admission and his wife's admission, okay, this is Stephanopoulos. His wife said, you know how we spend our Friday, Saturday nights? My husband and I, with our 2 teenage daughters. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. I think it was to Vogue magazine. Don't quote me on that. But it was one of these magazines that did kind of a profile on her and on her, marriage to Steffi. Said, yeah, we watch pornography. George, myself, my 2 daughters in the living room, we all watch porn together. My 15, 16-year-old daughters, we all watch. Like, we're watching, I don't know what, Star Wars. And I'm like, and you admit it? You admit it? The father is watching pornography with his wife and 2 daughters. And this guy does his shtick it's holier than thou shtick every freaking Sunday on ABC News, saying that Trump is a threat to the United States. He went on about the women in Trump. The women. The women. The women. The women. Oh, my God, the women. I want them all to go down. Every single one of them. This pedophilia, this sexual perversion is a cancer. It's a cancer. And we've got to expunge it. Final word to you, Barbara.
The first place to start expungement would probably be in our public schools where they teach it, and with some of the instructors who are also groomers. I agree with you 100%. And I was not minimizing Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, I know that.
Absolutely emphasizing personal choices and decisions have consequences. And what I would recommend, especially to anyone with daughters, my grandmother taught me at 5. I didn't sit on men's laps. None of our relatives, our male relatives, you don't climb up on their lap. What are you sitting on when you sit on a man's lap? Think about it. My grandmother taught me, anyone wants to look under your arms, under your dress, tell me. Talk to your daughters and help them to protect themselves from people like that. But that said, President Trump is a germaphobe. He likes women, absolutely. Beautiful women, grown women, and he chooses his own. He's a germaphobe. He would not. That's why they have looked at this man top to bottom, everything they said and done to President Trump, it bounces off of him. He's got to be the squeakiest clean man in America, because nothing that he's done comes anywhere near the crimes and the slime that the people that have been throwing things at him. And that's why I stand with him in his decisions, the people he picks, and the decisions that he makes. I say, let it play out, because there's always an end game when it comes to Donald Trump. And he's already got the end game planned. Just like these tariffs. Look at how things are falling in place.
The trade deals are magnificent. I mean, really, it's just, I don't think we fully, I don't mean you and me. I mean, as the country, as Americans, I don't think we fully appreciate what this man has been doing in the last what he has done to the global trading system. It's slightly off topic, but, it's the lead of today's show. He got Europe to bend the knee. He got Japan to bend the knee. I remember in the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s, where we were getting these massive trade deficits with Japan. And Bush 41 was wringing his hands. He didn't know what to do. Bill Clinton was wringing his hands. He didn't know what to do. Like, we can't, Obama, I remember Obama about the devastation caused by NAFTA and the massive trade deficits and the free trade with China. And he said, these jobs aren't coming back. The manufacturing's not coming back. Quote unquote, I'm not a magician. I can't just wave my wand and bring everything back. Well, I guess Trump's a magician. Because he waved his wand and they're all coming back. No, it's will. You never cared. Trump has the will, of course, the intelligence and the strategy, but he has the will to do it. They never wanted to do it. It's like the border. Remember, Biden kept saying, I can't secure the border. Remember the media kept saying this? You have to pass this. Remember that amnesty bill? The Lankford bill? Well, you've got to pass the border bill. There's no other way. And I'm like, no. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very quickly, I've got a really good email from Andrew. I'm not going to say the person's last name, to protect his privacy and anonymity. But by the way, you can email the Kuhner man always. Jeffrey Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER, at iHeartMedia.com. Jeffrey Kuhner at iHeartMedia.com. I can't promise I'll get back to you because I get so many emails, but I promise I read every single email that I get. Every single one of them. And here is what Andrew wrote. Jeff, President Trump had no reason to ever go to Epstein Island. Why? Because he is a so-called, quote-unquote, normal heterosexual with normal sexual desires for adult women of Slavic descent, i.e. from Eastern Europe, which is well known and untenable, even by the fake news media. Epstein concentrated on purveying forbidden sex to perverted liberal men desiring underage girls and boys. President Trump had absolutely no interest in that sort of thing. His allies should be blaring this from the rooftops. Bingo, Andrew. As I like to say, you're not 100%, you're 1,000% correct. You're completely right. Look, Trump he's like an open book. There's no filter with Trump. He likes, attractive women, yes. He was a ladies' man back in his day, yes. But he goes, look, my thing was Slavic women. Eastern European women. There's something about them. The height, the cheekbones, they just, I don't know. They push my buttons. I don't do kids. Now, when you're a pedophile or you're into sexually abusing, underage girls or boys, that's not something that you just do once or, hey, let me try it out. It's a perversion. It's a perverted sexual fetish. It's something that it's a pattern where it follows someone year after year, decade after decade. So it's obvious. Now, is he in the files? I suspect, yeah, I think he is. Do I think Trump is embarrassed that he's in the files? Yes. Who wants to be in the files? I wouldn't want to be in the files. But as even the media, every single one of them is admitting, just because he's in the files doesn't mean he's done anything wrong. In fact, a lot of this is unverifiable. It's just gossip. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the victims has come out and said, this is in the early 2000s. The party girls that Barbara was talking about. Well, this one was like a party girl, 15, 16 years old. And Epstein took her in as one of his girlfriends. And this is before he had the falling out with Trump. Well, she says, yeah, he took me to Mar-a-Lago. She says, he took me to Mar-a-Lago. I think I shook Trump's hand or whatever. I met people at Trump's Mar-a-Lago, his country club. So Trump's name is mentioned. It's there. Trump is in the file. The name is mentioned. But she never says he did anything inappropriate, that Trump ever molested me, or Trump was part of the sex trafficking network, or Trump was into underage girls, or nothing of the sort. She just literally said Epstein was grooming me, Epstein flew me around, and in fact, he took me to Trump's country club. He used to brag how many powerful people he knew. So Trump's name was mentioned. That's why just because your name is mentioned doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's embarrassing, in retrospect, who wants to be associated with this guy. But that doesn't mean you're a pedophile or a molester or a criminal, or quite the opposite. So that's what I mean. So what's concerning to Trump and to Pam Bondi and to others is there's a lot of people's names mentioned in these files for purely innocent reasons. Whatever, I went to this person's restaurant, this world-famous chef. Epstein said to bring the chef over and shake everybody's hand at the table. So you shake everybody's hand at the table. Hi, I hope you enjoy the food, blah, 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 blah. Jeffrey, hey, fist bump. And you didn't molest a girl. You didn't have inappropriate sexual relations. You didn't go to Epstein Island. Hey, he came to my restaurant. He's a big spender. He's got a lot of people around the table. I don't know who these women are. There's men, women. I don't know. I'm just shaking everybody's hand. Thank you for coming. What did I do? So what they're trying to prevent is now this person's name, I'm just using the chef as an example. Now this person's name and professional reputation could be absolutely destroyed just by the sheer mention that they're in the files. And furthermore, the government's going to get sued. I'm talking massive class action lawsuit. So that's why if you listen to Trump in retrospect, he says release the files, but only the evidence that's credible. Don't just release gossip or release names for the sake of releasing names, because now you're destroying people's lives and ruining their reputations. Now, one other very, very quick point. How much time left, Mike? 50 seconds? Okay, let me squeeze it in. That traitor, okay, former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Remember he served some time in Trump's first term, that neocon? It now turns out he was actually given a memo that showed conclusively, this is while he's Trump's national security advisor, that Brennan framed Trump as an agent of Russia. That the whole thing was utter BS. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, super quick, because all of you, trust me, you need to hear this. So, I mentioned Bolton very quickly. So, it's come out now definitively that John Bolton, at the time that he was serving in the Trump administration, so remember, he's his national security advisor, now is told, he's given a memo in which he sees the evidence that Trump was framed, that Brennan and Obama framed him as an agent of Russia, and that the Russia collusion allegations are completely false, made up, and a hoax. Now, he's fed this intel. Does he go to Trump with the memo, as anybody would, and say, Mr. President, my friend, here's the smoking gun. You just got framed by Obama and his people. And that's what's been consuming your presidency for the last couple of years. Here it is. No, the son of a you-know-what, the SOB, because he wanted to sabotage Trump, took the memo and put it in a safe, in a vault at the National Security Council, so nobody could see it or ever find out about it. That's the kind of weasel that John Bolton is. A traitor. Okay? Now, on top of this, Dan Bongino, Deputy FBI Director, I'm sure many of you have seen this story, but this all begins to make sense, went on X and gave a long post. Let me give you the long and short of it. He says now that he is now, during this investigation of the deep state that he says that they're conducting, he has now seen and learned of things that are so disturbing that they have shaken him to his very core. That there are now things that he's learned and that he's learning that in many ways have changed him as a person. And that in some ways he wishes he could unlearn. And he says we cannot survive as a constitutional republic if this continues to be kept in the shadows and beyond the knowledge of the American people. Now, he's being very cryptic. He's not telling us what it is. He just said, we're going to do this investigation by the book. We're going to follow the law. We're going to dot our I's and cross our T's. But he's basically hinting that massive prosecutions and indictments are coming, and what they're going to reveal is going to shock the American people the way it has shocked him. It is now coming out through Devin Nunes. Remember, he served on the House Intelligence Committee. He was one of the few heroes in Trump's first administration. Devin Nunes is now telling people, listen now to this. Remember the infamous raid on Mar-a-Lago by the FBI, ordered by Garland and Biden, where they came in with shoot-to-kill orders, guns blazing, and we all commented at the time, why? I mean, even if you wanted these so-called documents, A, Trump was handing them over, B, you could have asked for them. There was no need for this. And they ransacked everything. Remember, they went through Barron's room. They went through Melania's room. Forgive me. They went through her underwear. It was disgusting. They cleaned out Trump's safes. He had multiple safes. They took his passports, his private papers. They took everything. Devin Nunes now says the reason why this was done, and they have the evidence to prove it, is that, one, it was to help Biden win the re-election. To paint Trump as a criminal, a lawbreaker, and a traitor. Even though they knew that all three things were false and they were a lie. But that they were also looking for something. And what is it that they were looking for? The document, remember that House Intelligence Committee document, highly classified, that Tulsi Gabbard released in the middle of last week? The one that was buried somewhere, very few people knew its existence. It was buried in a CIA vault, limited access, highly classified, top secret CIA vault. It was that document. They were looking for that bombshell document. They wanted to know, did Trump have the goods on Obama, on Biden, on Hillary, on Brennan, on Comey, and on Clapper, that he was framed for the Russia collusion hoax? And is now coming out. That's why that was the real reason for the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Did he have the smoking gun documents? And that's why they turned his place upside down. Remember, they turned all the cameras off, the security cameras. And nobody was allowed in as the FBI. I mean, they hit that place like a cyclone. That's what they were looking for. And of course, Trump didn't have it because it was hidden away in a CIA vault. And only very few people knew about it. And if it wasn't for a whistleblower who told Tulsi Gabbard, You're not going to believe what's in that vault. She never would have known. Nobody would have ever found out. Tulsi Gabbard found out. She got the file, and then she released it. I think this is what Dan Bongino was talking about when he says, this has shaken me to my core. That's the Gestapo. That's the KGB. That's the Stasi. You go in under the pretext of these documents that the National Archives wants, that the president is entitled to have, with shoot to kill orders. And in fact, you're really looking for secret documents that implicate the crimes of the previous administration. Holy mackerel. And you're going to tell me this is not treason? And this is not the biggest scandal in over 100 years? And that Obama has presidential immunity? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. 617-266-6868. John in Lowell. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi, John.
Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, John. You're on the air, my friend.
Jeff, there might be presidential immunity, but there's no such thing as Kenyan immunity. He's not from here. You know it. I know it. Hillary knows it. Obama knows it. And they know it.
Interesting. John, you think they're going to they're going to uncover and get to the truth about the Obama birth certificate and that he was born in Kenya? And then his mother just put him on a plane a couple of weeks later and, hightailed it to Hawaii?
It's already been exposed. We already know, Jeff. He admitted it himself in his own book. Self-admission is guilt, is it not?
That's an excellent point.
Bye-bye, Barack. Enjoy Leavenworth.
Interesting. John, as always, thank you very much for that call. Look, that's another thing, honestly. And I know Trump's people listen. Tulsi, if she's the one to get the birth certificate, the original one, the one that he's born in Kenya. Tulsi, you get that birth certificate. It's all over. Adrian in New Mexico. Thanks for holding, Adrian, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
Jeff, I want to ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Have you heard if the passports for Barack Obama, Comey, and Brennan and Clapper and all the rest of the scoundrels, have these passports, have you heard, have they been revoked? Because it strikes me that all of those people are high flight risks.
Not to my knowledge, Adrian. Not so far. I mean, they may have been, but I don't think so. I have, let me put it to you this way. I have not read anything to that effect.
Okay. Well, I hope that something gets done about that. And you were touching on earlier about indictments being done. I really wish that this Department of Justice would really start moving because they move at the speed of a sloth. They just take forever.
Oh, a snail. No, I agree. Adrian, I agree.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I agree. I completely agree. Now, their argument is, I just want to be fair to them, and I agree with you, Adrian. Please don't get me wrong. But to them, they say, well, no, we want to make sure that we get every detail accurate, that no one can throw this case out in court. Nobody can say that there was a mistake in the indictment that we filed, or there's some loophole or any wiggle room. So we're going, very plodding, very slow, very cautious, because, we don't want to make a mistake. That's their argument. Look, I'm willing to give them time, Adrian. Okay, it's July. It's, it's fine. I'll give them another, month? But if we don't see anything by early September, then they're not up for the job. And I think Dan Bongino in particular, the way he keeps hyping everything up cryptically, this has shocked me to my core. This has led me to question everything I've ever believed in about our country. Saying the intelligence community has been running wild, and I'm not the same man anymore. After what I've learned, what I've just learned, I can't unlearn. So, okay, fine. Look, what Devin Nunes exposed yesterday alone, that they went into Trump's compound at Mar-a-Lago, to win the election, to guarantee Biden re-election by framing Trump again. But what they were really doing was looking for that secret set of documents that Tulsi Gabbard declassified, last week? And that was the real intention. Wow. I mean, that alone is... So the FBI is completely corrupt. The intelligence community is completely corrupt. The DOJ is completely corrupt. And you want to talk about high crimes and misdemeanors. And by the way, Merrick Garland signed off on this, as did Biden. I mean, it's bombshell now upon bombshell upon bombshell. But they got to start roping him in. We got to start seeing charges and indictments. If not, it's going to destroy all three of them. Bondi, Kash Patel, and Bongino. You can't hype and hype and hype and then not deliver. Adrian, am I wrong?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And the other reason why it's so very important that people get indicted and prosecuted is if that doesn't happen, we're not going to be a country anymore. That's the very unfortunate thing. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
We have to keep the pressure on him. Adrian, that's why I'm not letting this story go. The only way we're going to get the truth if we keep squeezing and pressuring and demanding the truth. And that's why I give you my word, Adrian. I'm not letting this scandal go. Adrian, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Kathy in Rochester. Thanks for holding, Kathy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Kathy.
I just wanted to follow up on Barbara from Maryland. I mean, I love that woman. I love when she calls. She is so smart. And, like her, I have full confidence knowing that Trump knows exactly what he's doing. And I love when he plays games with people because all the truth is going to come out. I think we all know by this time that Obama is an absolute traitor. And I hope that he pays the ultimate price, hopefully with his life, because there was nothing more I would love to see than that traitor hung. The guy was groomed to come to our country to take over and transform our country into the hellhole that the Biden administration put the topping on. And now Trump is in charge of cleaning up the mess. But we all know who the players are. But can you imagine Dan Bongino saying that changed him, what he saw? That is how criminal these people are. They are just scum of the earth, vermin, as Michael Savage would call them, absolute vermin. And they need to be taken out like rats on a ship. They need to be taken out one by one until the ship is cleaned of the rats and it can sail forth. And that's what we need to do. And Trump knows exactly what he's doing. And I look forward to the show in the upcoming months and years of putting these people away or possibly hanging them for treason. That's what they deserve.
Well, that's the crime. I mean, that was the punishment. And, in the old days, to me, the good old days, you committed treason against this country. It was the electric chair. It was, firing squad, or it was, death by hanging. Take your pick. Pick your poison.